When you had that third failure in a row, did you think, I need to pack this in?
Never.
Why not?
I don't ever give up.
I grew up in South Africa. The house was quiet on the outside, but full of tension inside. My father was a brilliant man, but cruel. He knew exactly how to bring me down. His words made me feel small, worthless. At school, I was the odd one out. It's too quiet, too different. That made me an easy target. One day, a group of boys surrounded me, threw me down the stairs, and kicked me until I passed out. The world seemed too loud, and I couldn't be part of it. I woke up in the hospital, but no one cared. I didn't understand what was wrong with me. I felt broken, alone, invisible. Nobody wanted to help me, because as an adult, after building billion-dollar companies, I almost lost everything. I've slept on the office floor, borrowed money from friends, watched my rockets explode, been ousted from my own company, and divorced several times. I spent hours and hours hiding in books, programming on the computer, trying to understand the universe because I couldn't understand people. That was just the beginning. But if I survived all that, it's because the will to escape failure became the force that drives me to this day.
I was like the youngest kid in the grade. I was like almost the smallest kid in the grade. So being small and having violent bullies is a bad situation, you know. It got like a reasonably good size around age 15. And then around age 16 is when they stopped trying to beat me out because it didn't work out well for me.
I was born in 1971 in Pretoria, South Africa. My father was an engineer, an extremely intelligent man, but also difficult to live with. He wasn't just demanding, he was cold and abusive. His words cut deeper than any physical blow. He knew exactly how to belittle me, how to make me feel small and useless. I never knew if I would be the next target of his ruthless criticisms. My mother, on the other hand, was kind and loving. She did what she could to protect me, but always seemed powerless against my father's harshness and my own struggle to fit in. I grew up feeling invisible, not because my mother didn't love me, but because the environment I lived in didn't allow me to truly be seen. I was alone in the middle of a silent storm. At school, life was even harder. I wasn't just strange. I was a constant target of bullying. Run away from that pain, that loneliness, that constant feeling of not being good enough. The money and success that came later were just consequences of a deep desire to escape mediocrity and suffering. I had no friends. I learned to read technical books that no one my age even understood. At 10, I discovered programming. It was an instant passion. I spent hours in front of the computer, exploring code, creating small programs. At 12, I managed to sell a game I created, a simple game, but it meant much more than money to me. I had no one. I felt lost, too different to belong anywhere. My mind was a refuge, my only escape. It was a small victory against a world that seemed to conspire to make me give up. They beat me, they abused me. I was hospitalized more than once because of the violence from classmates. It was hard to understand why those people hated me so much. I just wanted to be left alone, to be accepted, but that never happened. The social isolation was overwhelming. From a very early age, I was self-taught. Selling that game wasn't about financial value. It was the first sign that I could build something, that I could create a different path, my own path. But despite that spark in my life, what I really wanted was to run away.
But I guess for me, the social cues were not intuitive. So I was just very bookish, and I didn't understand this. I guess others could sort of intuitively understand what was meant by something. I would just tend to take things very literally, as just like the words as spoken were exactly what they meant. But then that turned out to be wrong. You can't. They're not simply saying exactly what they mean. There's all sorts of other things that are meant. It took me a while to figure that out. So I was, bullied quite a lot. So I did not have a.
At 17, I decided to leave everything behind. I grabbed a worn-out suitcase, a few dollars in my pocket, and fled South Africa. I didn't take much, just enough to try a new life, a fresh start. I was just another lost face in a cold city, too far from home, with no one to call family. The silence of anonymity was both frightening and liberating. There, a coworker, driven by jealousy, even pulled a knife on me. It was a terrifying moment in my life, but I managed to defend myself and disarm the attacker. That physical threat didn't break him, it showed me I had to be strong, stronger than any danger that came my way. Not because everything was fine there, but because I needed to escape the weight of a past that almost broke me. I worked cutting wood, carrying heavy timber, cleaning hot, dirty boilers, washing dishes in restaurants. The work was hard, poorly paid, and I was alone through it all. Often, I came home exhausted, my hands raw, my body aching, and my head full of doubts. Arriving in Canada felt like stepping into an invisible world. Nobody knew me, nobody cared. There was no luxury. When I was 18, I worked as a waiter in Richmond, near Vancouver. But even with all the hardship and loneliness, I preferred that path. I preferred the exhaustion and daily struggle to the emotional prison I had left behind. At least there, I had control over my destiny. That possibility was all I needed to keep going.
How do you choose your team? Based on what?
Well, I suppose honestly that it tends to be gut feel more than anything else. So when I interview somebody, my interview question is always the same. It's
What do you
just,
ask?
I said, tell me the story of your life. And the decisions that you made along the way and why you made them. And then and also tell me about some of the most difficult problems you worked on and how you solved them. And that question I think is very important, because the people that really solve the problem, they know exactly how they solved it. They know the little details. And the people that pretended to solve the problem, they can maybe go one level and then they get stuck.
After spending a few years in Canada, I knew I wanted more. Canada was a refuge, but I wanted to be where the biggest ideas were born in the United States. I knew that's where I could truly change the future. With little savings and a lot of determination, I got into the University of Pennsylvania. It was a huge achievement, but reality was tough. To support myself, I sold computer parts work I learned during my self-taught childhood. I shared dirty apartments, lived on cheap fast food, and struggled to pay every penny of my bills. The pressure and loneliness were constant. I remember one day during a presentation, my ideas were ridiculed by classmates and professors. I felt the shame and weight of failure like a wave dragging me down. The nights were long, the days exhausting, and the debts growing. But I had a clear goal: to graduate, not to become just another employee, but to create something bigger. My dreams seemed small in the face of skepticism and disdain. Many times I wondered if it was worth continuing. I earned my degree in physics and economics to worlds that helped me understand the forces that move the world, but I knew my mission was to be an entrepreneur, an innovator, not to follow the traditional path. After that, I enrolled in Stanford for a PhD, but quit after only 2 days. I knew that wasn't where I would make a difference. My place was building my own companies, facing risks and challenges. Nobody believed in me, and that only made me bet even more on myself. The journey was just beginning.
What was your biggest failure, and how did it change you?
I have to really think hard about that. Failure. Never heard of it.
There's your answer.
Well, there's a ton of failures along the way, that's for sure. For SpaceX, the first 3 launches failed, and we were just barely able to scrape together enough parts and money to do the 4th launch. If that 4th launch had failed, we would have been dead. So multiple failures along the way. I tried very hard to get the right expertise in for SpaceX. I tried hard to find a great chief engineer for the rocket, but the good chief engineers wouldn't join, and the bad ones, well, there was no point in hiring them. So I ended up being chief engineer of the rocket. So if I could have found somebody better, then we would have maybe had less than 3 failures.
My brother Kimball and I started Zip2 with little more than an idea and a lot of determination. We wanted to create something to help newspapers adapt to the internet, a business directory and online maps, something new at the time, even before Google existed. We had no money, no formal business experience, but we had courage and a willingness to learn. We spent days and nights in the office, which also served as our makeshift dormitory. Luxury was a distant concept. Life was work, sacrifice, and a lot of uncertainty. Almost every line of our code disappeared. We spent desperate hours trying to recover everything, knowing that if we lost that work, all the effort could be wasted. No beds, just the cold floor and some old blankets. And tough decisions that distracted me from what I really wanted, to build something big and innovative. We showered at the gym in the building because there was no other option. It was a huge amount that gave us financial security, but also left me feeling both relieved and frustrated. But in reality, I realized money isn't everything. Selling Zip2 was a step to gain strength, to prepare myself for much bigger challenges ahead. Once, we almost lost all our work because we forgot to save a system backup. There was no salary, just coffee and the sound of keyboards. As Zip2 began to grow, we realized we needed a lot more money and infrastructure to truly compete in the market. We were racing against giants, and my vision was bigger than what we had in hand. But the business was also getting heavy. There was lots of pressure from investors, management conflicts. Then the opportunity came to sell Zip2 to Compaq for $307 million. I took $22 million from that sale. It felt like I was on top of the world. I knew this wasn't the end of my story. It was just the beginning. Shortly before I founded XCOM, something happened that very few people know about, but it completely changed the way I see life. I caught malaria, and I almost died. It happened on a trip to Zimbabwe with my brother. It wasn't a vacation. It was just a chance to breathe before diving back into chaos. I came back feverish, dizzy, and intense pain. At first, I thought it was just a bad flu. But what followed was brutal. Delusions, sweating, weight loss, my body shutting down. The diagnosis: malaria, severe. The doctor said, if you'd arrived a day later, you wouldn't have made it. Hearing that didn't scare me at first. But later, alone in that hospital room, it all hit me like an avalanche. For the first time, I felt completely out of control. There was nothing I could calculate, build, or buy to get me out of that bed. And right there, between fever and lucidity, something hit me hard. Life is ridiculously short, and time is a currency that burns in your hand. I had millions in the bank, plans in motion, companies growing. But lying there, none of that mattered. What consumed me the most was something else. The feeling of wasting time. Time to do what I wanted. Time to build what didn't yet exist. Time to be useful. When I finally recovered, I didn't come back the same. I came back obsessed. With every second. With every unproductive meeting. With every useless distraction. Malaria didn't just make me physically weaker. It made me allergic to wasting time. Since then, every project I start has urgency. Not because I'm impatient, but because to me, every day that goes by without doing something meaningful is a day wasted. And I still hear that doctor saying, you almost died. So I made myself a promise. As long as I'm alive, I'll treat every second like it could be the last.
You don't need college to learn stuff, okay? Everything is available basically for free. You can learn anything you want for free. It is not a question of learning. So I think colleges are basically for fun and to prove you can do your chores, but they're not for learning.
After selling Zip2, I had money. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to worry about the next rent. But instead of relaxing, I did the opposite. I invested $10 million to start my next company, X.com. My idea was simple and ambitious: to reinvent the global banking system, a silent coup orchestrated by investors and executives who thought I was a problem. I wanted to make financial transfers as easy as sending an email. But the truth, almost no one believed in it. It merged with Confinity and became what the world now knows as PayPal. And with growth came conflicts. I was intense, direct, a perfectionist, and that bothered a lot of people. We started with a small but hungry team. We grew fast. In 2000, while I was taking my first vacation in years, I got the news. They had kicked me out of my own company, but I didn't celebrate. It hurt. I was taken down from my own dream. But even so, XCOM kept going. In 2002, PayPal was sold to eBay for $1.5 billion. I took about $180 million net. It was more money than I ever imagined having. I took nearly everything and invested in new projects. Some said I was throwing it all away. Others thought I was crazy. But deep down, I knew. Either I changed the world, or I failed trying.
My workload went up from about, 70 to 8 hours a week to probably 120, yeah. I go to sleep, I wake up, I work, go to sleep, wake up, work, do that 7 days a week. I'll have to do that for a while, no choice. But I think once Twitter is set on the right path, I think it is a much easier thing to manage than SpaceX or Tesla.
After selling PayPal, I could have stopped. I could have lived comfortably, invested safely, but it was never about the money. I created SpaceX because I believed and still believe that humanity needs to become multiplanetary. Colonizing Mars wasn't crazy to me. It was a plan. And I created Tesla because I hate oil. I wanted to prove that electric cars were not only possible, they were desirable. But the world wasn't ready. Everyone said I was throwing money away, and for a while, they were right. I invested every penny I earned. Literally, I ran out of money even to pay rent. I had to borrow money from friends just to keep the basics going. SpaceX rockets exploded, one, then another, then another. Each explosion felt like a punch to the stomach. At Tesla, cars were delayed. Promises seemed exaggerated, and the numbers just didn't add up. The media called me a fraud. Elon Musk is going bankrupt. Investors ran away. Analysts laughed. The stock prices crashed. And in the middle of it all, my marriage also fell apart. I got divorced. It was painful, cold, and inevitable. I was exhausted, emotionally, physically, financially. I reached a point where I literally had to choose between saving SpaceX or Tesla. I couldn't keep both afloat. And still, I put what little money I had left, the small amount remaining, into both. Everything, again. It was that or accept that I had failed at everything. 2008 was the worst year of my life. In every way, financially, emotionally, physically, I was wrecked. SpaceX had already failed 3 times, 3 rockets, 3 explosions.
Ow.
Millions of dollars evaporating in seconds. Every launch was a sentence, and every failure a direct blow to the soul. I only had enough money for one more rocket. One, if it failed, SpaceX would die, and with it, everything I believed in. Meanwhile, Tesla was also collapsing. The global financial crisis hit hard. Investors disappeared. We couldn't deliver the cars. The bills piled up. No one trusted me anymore, not even some who had once been on my side. And I was so broke I had to borrow money from friends to pay rent. As a billionaire, bankrupt. Then came SpaceX's 4th launch. The last chance. I watched from afar, heart in my throat. If it exploded, it was over. But it didn't explode. It worked. And at that moment I cried. Really cried. Days later, NASA signed a $1.6 billion contract with SpaceX. It saved the company. It saved me. Soon after, Tesla received a loan from the US government. It was enough to breathe, reorganize, and survive. The truth is, I was one step away from losing everything. Everything. But what kept me standing was the conviction, maybe irrational, that I couldn't stop. That if the world gave up on me, I couldn't give up on the world. After surviving 2008, a lot of people thought I'd play it safe. After all, I had already pulled 2 companies back from the brink of death. I had billions in the bank. But what no one understood is that I never wanted safety. In 2018, SpaceX was preparing for the biggest launch in its history, the Falcon Heavy. 3 rockets strapped together, dozens of engines, tons of payload. We had never attempted anything like it before. And the truth? There was a very real chance it would explode right there on the pad, live in front of the whole world. Many said it was pure ego, that it was unnecessary. But I was risking the company's reputation and my own. Maybe they were right. A sign that, even after coming close to losing everything, after being ridiculed, dismissed, and doubted, I was still here. But that rocket meant more than just engineering. It was a symbol. And to make that even clearer, I decided to put something personal on board. My car. A reminder that dreaming big isn't crazy, it's survival. A red Tesla Roadster, with a spacesuit wearing mannequin in the driver's seat. Everyone thought it was a joke. But to me, it was a letter to the universe. On launch day, my heart was frozen. sweaty palms, mind spinning. Part of me thought it was going to fail, that this would be the end, but it wasn't. Falcon Heavy lifted off. It worked. The image of that car floating through space, Earth in the background, David Bowie playing, it spread across the world. It became art, it became history, and that's when I realized failing is acceptable. Quitting is not.
But how do you say the name?
Well,
Is it a placeholder?
first of all, my partner is the one that actually mostly came up with the name.
Congratulations to her.
Yeah, she's great at names. So, I mean, it's just X, the letter X, and then the AE is like pronounced Ash. Yeah, and then A12. A12 is my contribution.
Oh, why A12?
Archangel 12, the precursor to the SR-71, coolest plane ever. It's true.
I was always told you can't have it all. Tried to prove otherwise, and failed many times. From early on, I threw myself into business as if my life depended on it. Maybe because deep down, it really did. Building companies was the only way I found to make sense of the chaos I always felt inside, but the price was high. I married Justine for the first time in 2000. It was a time when I was still trying to balance the passion for building with the desire to start a family. We had children, lost a baby, died at only 10 weeks. Sudden death, no warning, just emptiness. I never got over that. I just buried it deep down. That's when I started hiding in work, consuming my whole life. After that came the twins, then the triplets. 5 kids at home, and I was almost never there. Strong, an artist, unique, different from anyone I'd known, patient. And when you live like that, there's not much left to offer as a partner. Sometimes I was physically there, but emotionally distant. Not for lack of love, but because of a constant feeling that if I stopped, everything would collapse. The company was growing, and so was I. But emotionally, I was drifting away. The divorce was inevitable. Oh, Talila, I married twice. Years of trying, making up, breaking up. She's brilliant, but living with me is living under the pressure of being second to a rocket, a code, a factory, a chaos. I was obsessive with work, with details, with every decision. With Grimes, things seemed more fluid. Maybe because she also lived on the edge between art and madness. To disconnect, to simply live an ordinary life. Others call it focus. I call it consequence. We had 3 kids, good moments. And even with so much creative affinity, the life I lead doesn't fit with normal relationships. When you're running to save the world, you forget who's right there by your side. Meetings, launches, rockets, mergers, crises, but time. Time doesn't come back. But because to me, every company I build is a piece of who I am, and that, for many, is hard to accept. Some call it ego. I also had kids with an executive at my own company. It was discreet, silent, but still a part of me. I've had relationships marked by love, respect, even intellectual connection. But in the end, all were affected by the same thing: my inability to stop. Today, I know I have at least 11 children, maybe more. I love them all. But the truth, I've been too absent. Too many of them. I'm more an idea than a presence. And that hurts more than any rocket explosion. Because you can rebuild a company. But the truth is, business was always my priority. Not out of coldness.
When I was a kid, I was wondering kind of what's the meaning of life? Like, why are we here? What's it all about? And I came to the conclusion that what really matters is trying to understand the right questions to ask.
Today, Tesla is worth trillions. SpaceX sends astronauts to space, lands rockets, connects the world with satellites. I became officially the richest man on the planet. Sounds like the happy ending of a movie, right? But it's not. Because along with the applause came the attacks. My public image started swinging between genius and villain. One day innovation hero, the next threat to democracy. When I bought Twitter, one of the biggest influence platforms on the planet, I knew what I was doing. I renamed it X because I believe communication, freedom, and technology should go hand in hand. But the reaction was brutal. Millions criticized me, accused me of fomenting chaos, nailed me egocentric, lunatic, tyrant. Maybe I am, or maybe I'm building something only understood 20 years from now. I admit it hurts, not because of ego, but because I understand the impact my decisions have on people's lives. I never wanted to be hated. I want to be understood. I know leading something new always attracts resistance, and often misunderstanding. But what no one sees is what happens when the cameras turn off. I still sleep less than 6 hours a night. My mind never shuts down. It's always on fire. It's jumping between rockets, brain chips, self-driving cars, and digital wars. The more success I have, the more distant I become from people. The top is silent, cold, and sometimes I wonder if it was worth it. Still, I refuse to stop. I know the criticism will continue. I know many won't understand my choices now, but I believe in the future I'm building. Deep down, I know this will change the world for the better. And I remember that even if the world gives up on me, I will never give up on the future. It wasn't luck, it was pain, it was persistence. Maybe a little madness. I'm not a genius, I'm just stubborn. You don't need money to start, you need a reason. My reason? To escape mediocrity? To do something that mattered? Keep going. Keep going, even when it seems impossible. Keep going, especially when it hurts. Because it's in that pain that you'll find the strength to overcome yourself. That's how you build a life, not with luck, but with struggle, with grit, with refusal to quit. And if this message hits something inside you, like a spark you didn't know was there, don't let it fade. Like it, share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear this today, because sometimes one voice is all it takes to remind another. You're not done yet.
There are a lot of negative things in the world. There's a lot of terrible things that are happening all over the world, all the time. There are lots of problems that need to get solved. There's lots of things that are miserable and kind of get you down. But life cannot just be about solving one miserable problem after another. That can't be the only thing. There need to be things that inspire you, that make you glad to wake up in the morning and be part of humanity. That's why we did this. It is time to go forth, become a star-faring civilization, be out there among the stars, expand the scope and scale of human consciousness. I find that incredibly exciting. That makes me glad to be alive. I hope you feel the same way.